I'm living through the love winds. I'm living through the love winds. Hello, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome back to another episode of the Reconnect with Your Teenager podcast with yours truly, Emma G. If you are new to this platform, let me break it down a little bit for you. I am a musician, singer, songwriter. That was my song that you heard, but also a youth empowerment through songwriting coach where I use the power of music and songwriting to help young people step into their voice, find their power, and sing their song of authentic truth. But of course, there are so many amazing, powerful, and effective ways that we can help young people find their voices. And, you know, I'm just one cog in the wheel of multitudes of experts, therapists, coaches, mentors, psychotherapists, etc., who are doing their part to help young people find themselves in the post-pandemic world. Today, I am joined all the way across the pond. It's a very large pond over in Switzerland. Nicole Wittauer. Is that how I say your name?
Wittauer, yeah.
Wittauer. Okay. Well, listen, I love it. And where does that name come from?
It's originally German. My father's German.
I love it. I love it. My last name is very complicated, so that's why I've deduced it down to G. So, but it rhymes, right? You've got the energy. It's kind of how I tell people. Anyways, I'm full of bad jokes. Not funny. This is why I do music and youth empowerment work. But this isn't about me. This is about you. So please tell me a little bit about yourself. You have been in the coaching space for a minute, but you've got a relatively, obviously creative approach to youth empowerment, but also just a rather non-conventional way of looking at coaching as a whole. So can you tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so my name is Nicole Wittauer, as you said, and I like to work with people who feel kind of like they haven't found their place yet in this world, who feel a little bit inadequate or might have imposter syndrome. I've suffered from it many times and I still do sometimes. And I just try to create spaces for self-discovery. And because I do believe that everything we need to know is really already within us. And it's just about creating that space for that to come up and be coaxed out of them. And so I love creating these playful spaces where that can happen.
I love that so much, and I could not agree more. I often reference a few years back, I was in Barcelona at a yoga, yoga exercise, and the yogi instructor said something that it's going to stick with me for the rest of my life, is that you are loved, you are love, and everything you could possibly need lives within you because we have the answers in us. And I was like, yo, that's deep. But it's true. It's completely true. They say that children are the most honest humans in the world, and we kind of get taught out of that. And so you've been able to find creativity and play as a means to just re-engage with that part of ourselves, to find those answers. So let's sort of bring it back and hone in at the same time. Let's focus first and foremost on your art projects. How does what does that look like? How did you stumble across art as a form of therapy, of coaching, of working with people?
Well, I think it's always been my own therapy. When I was an adolescent, I went through this phase where I was drawing a lot and, sort of connecting to the hypocrisy of the world. I thought I had sort of connected to this truth that everybody was just wearing masks and was pretending to be something else. And so I would do these drawings of sort of these heads with, like the lid is open and inside you could see the masks and sort of things hidden away. So very, very symbolic. And I really wanted to get into art. I tried getting into an art school in Geneva, and I didn't get in. And so art has been sort of in and out of my world through life. But I've always reconnected at times. And more recently, as I was going through this coaching approach for the last 12 years, trying to make sense of a lot of the things I was learning, also from a spiritual level, going through some interesting retreats and self discovery,
Mm-hmm.
I felt really the desire and the need to reconnect to drawing as a tool to be able to visualize things that were getting too complex in my mind.
Mm,
I'm somebody who needs to see things.
mm,
Some people, they can read a book and they understand everything. I read 2 pages and I'm like, I need to see it, right? And so I would draw these images just for myself to be able to make sense of things, to
right.
simplify things. And I was creating them, and people, coaching clients and so forth, sometimes I'd show them something if it made sense to me, and they were like, oh, you need to share these things. And so art has sort of come back in, and it's combined itself with the coaching and with other things. And now, I use it as a tool for people to also draw, to connect to their own subconscious mind, because it can put you into this beautiful meditative state of calmness. But also there's these answers that come up, this information. It's like your analytical mind has sort of taken a back seat and saying, oh, we're being creative right now. All right, I can go for a walk. I'll This doesn't concern me. And during that time, there's space for things to come
Mm,
through, because you don't try to find an answer, you're just creating that space. And you as a musician, I'm sure, know exactly what I'm talking about, right? It's just you get into that zone and you don't even know how there's all this stuff just came through.
yeah.
But you
No,
hear it and I see it. That's the
and it's
difference.
funny because even from the beginning of when you open your mouth just now, talking about the masks that we talk about, or that we inadvertently put on ourselves, I have written so many songs about giving ourselves permission to take off those masks. So I almost feel like we need to like join forces on a music video or something, of like the music of it's okay to take the mask off. It's okay to dig beneath the surface. It's okay. And putting that visual component to it, I think, is so powerful, because you're right. There are so many different ways to learn, so many different ways to express. We have our tactile learners, our visual learners, our auditory learners, and our oral learners. And expressors. And so to give young people in particular, and older people, but to give young people some tools to be able to dig into that part of their psyche in a way that feels creative, non-confrontational, and just a little outside the box, maybe, I think it can be incredibly powerful, because you're right, that can sort of give them permission to explore some spaces that they might not otherwise be comfortable to talk about, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it might not be conscious in their mind anyway, right? This is
That's true.
about accessing information that is either being repressed or just not doesn't have the room to come and express itself. I discover so much about myself when I draw, when I paint.
Mm,
Um, and so a lot of young people, they might not think they have it in them, and they might, because they don't find the words, they don't find the structure, it doesn't make sense. But if you just give them that space without that pressure to express themselves, without the pressure of coming up with ideas about what they want to do with their life, and all those things, and just give them something else to construct, to play with. When we use our hands, there's this thing that happens. People garden for a reason, people cook for a reason. It's their
mm,
hands are being so active, and it's stimulating the mind in some way. There's a connection there that has been documented actually quite a bit. Which is just, it's like the hands are also a tool for talking, right? It's a voice. Our voice
mm.
doesn't always come through the voice. Sometimes it comes through other parts of our body.
100%. So I want to circle back. You mentioned repression, which yes, it's especially for our Gen Zers, right? They've had to well, I mean, I guess everybody has repressed emotions, repressed feelings and experiences that we're all kind of navigating. But I'm particularly picking on Gen Z at the moment because of the last few years that they've had to endure through the isolation, through schooling online, through, just dealing with being sometimes stuck at home with, those that aren't their safest people. And having to, sort of guard themselves and build these internal walls. There's a lot going on for this generation.
Mm.
How does working with art, and work with you specifically, how do you help them to kind of unleash the beast, if you will, and let that out in a way that feels safe and honors their vulnerability and gives them permission to really grow through it as opposed to just go through it?
It's one of those questions that is like a Pandora's box,
I know.
right?
And go.
And as you know, it all
It all
depends on
depends,
who
of
you're talking
course.
to, and what they're like, and everybody's going to react differently.
Mhm.
Um, uh, for me, I think I just naturally try to create a space where they feel, first of all, they don't feel judged, and that's something, through the coaching experience and learning, I really realized the power of the non-judgmental space, right? Like
Yeah.
it's just so valuable not to have expectations, not even to need to understand. Okay. I often find people, they say, yeah, but I don't understand. I say, well, why do you need to understand?
Oh,
The
that's
important
interesting.
thing is that they understand. Like if
Yeah.
they can understand something about themselves when they're talking to you, you don't have to understand or agree or anything. You just have to create that space so they come to some sort of conscious awareness for themselves, right? I mean, I sometimes have clients of all ages, and I can see their eyes are starting to wander, right? Because they're thinking, and then they're not even talking. But as long as their eyes are moving and they're somewhere else, I am quiet. I am like, I don't need to know what they're thinking. I don't know what journey they're on. I just need to know that something's happening, right? And it's about holding that space for them. And the other thing, when I became a parent, I was always so very conscious about my parents' approach, right? And at the
Right.
time, and I made these vows to myself when I was a teenager of, it was these promises that when I would be a mom, if I was to be a mom, how I would do things differently. And then when I became a mom, that voice would come and say, remember, and I was like, oh shit, now I'm going to have to stick by that, right?
Yeah.
And it was about actually, rather than saying, don't do this, whatever, it was more about just saying, this is what happened to me. Um, and, this is what didn't go so well.
Hmm.
And I just want to share that with you. But, you need to make your own choices, and you need to have your own experience. And so it's about showing a more vulnerable side as well. Also, no, I don't have the answers as a mom, as a coach. I don't have the answers.
Hmm.
The answers are within them, but I can be there to hold that space and go through it with them without feeling the need to solve their problems, without feeling
Right.
the need to give them the answers of what to do. And I find that's actually reassuring both for them and for me.
Of
It takes
course.
the pressure off,
Of course.
and that's the thing. There's so much pressure in the world right now for these young people, much more than when I was young, because the world is looking at them, you know,
Hmm.
and not just through social media, but through, because it's just a different world now. They need to fix the world that we broke, right? And that our ancestors broke. They need to do everything right. They're on camera. If they do anything wrong, it'll be on camera. It'll be somewhere, on
Hmm.
somebody's post. Um, and there's so many expectations that they eat the right things, and that they do the right, in terms of vegetarian or vegan or whatever, not for them, but for the world. And I see that pressure is huge. It's
Yeah.
huge. And if we can somehow take some of that pressure off by not adding another layer of expectation and demands and so forth,
It's like the
that's
whole thing of
already something.
like stop shooting on yourself, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting what you're saying around like giving them permission to excuse me, understand themselves as opposed to feeling that pressure to do the understanding yourself. I think at least in the States, a lot of people have this tendency to want to do one of two things. One, pretend that they understand and feign like they understand. Like, I know exactly what you're going through, which I know, and I say this to all of my kids, I don't know what you're going through because wasn't raised in this country. I wasn't, but, trauma has many different faces. Trauma has many different clothing, and so but they all have the same kind of outcomes and then there's the other kind of the other approach where, well, I don't understand it, I'm not going to try to understand it, you guys and do the work. So but you seem to find this happy medium of like helping them sort of walk through, breathe through, grow through, learn through their journey of self-discovery and healing. And you said this in earlier, which I absolutely loved. You said you help people to connect their subconscious mind to remove useless baggage, discover their hidden treasures, and find their voice, which I think is like this happy medium of like both you're in there doing the dirty work with them, but also it's your treasure. It's so how, like, what does that process even look like as a coach?
So, well, I have this approach. I try to integrate play into everything,
Which I also
for
love.
for myself and for my clients. And it doesn't mean that it's always, fun and easy.
Mm-hmm.
But I find that the playful mindset and the playful approach is so useful because it's all about exploring
Mm-hmm.
without expectations. That's what play is. And it's what nature gave us as a tool to learn. It is the most powerful learning tool out there,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's within us and we know how to do it. We do it as children. And the shame is that we try to pull it out of young people, we say, oh, it's time to get serious. So you're going into the real world. You have to make big decisions. It's going to have an impact on the rest of your life. It's like, no. No, like when I meet young people now, it's like, don't grow up, it's a trap, like it's like we have to take that out of the language. I became extremely serious when I became a mom and, sort of had to be that. And then I realized, no. And, I have reconnected to my inner child and my playfulness. And like, I'm still 18. My grandma told me when she was 80, like she leaned over to me and whispered in my ear, like this was a big secret. And she was like, you know what? Inside here, I'm still 18. It was like, and I thought, oh my God. And, she was onto something. It's true. And I think that's part of it as well, is allowing ourselves to still be in that same discovery journey. Like we never stop. If we think we've got it all figured out, we're just BSing ourselves and other people. It's the journey that's interesting, and it doesn't stop. And so when I take young people on this journey or anybody who's sort of in that space of, I don't know who I am, what I'm trying to do, what I'm here for, I take them on. I created this identity atlas a few years ago, and it's this playful space in our mind, and it's very visual, of these locations in our identity. So typically there'll be a location called the mountains, which is all about heritage and all about that solid, big institution that's imposing, but also something you can lean on. And it's about exploring that space in our mind on paper, doodling around it, and just connecting to what that mountain means to us, what the heritage means to us, how we identify it with it, and whether it's really, ours. We identify with so many things subconsciously that have nothing to do with us. And it's about going into these different places and spaces and asking ourselves, how much of that is mine? How much of that is useful? How much of that do I need to actually, carry along? Or how much of that have I not been actually exploring enough to find those hidden treasures, to crack open those rocks that might
Yeah.
be, or pebbles that might be a little painful, but actually, if you crack them open, there are gems inside of there, right? And you were talking about trauma before. I find trauma so interesting because it is that thing that, we set aside and we don't want to look at and we sweep under the carpet. I always thought that I have no trauma, right? I thought I had a pretty easy childhood. I've not, and then, and then I went and started
I'm jealous.
exploring that. Oh my God, I found some, I had these go-to traumas. Like if people ask me, what was the most traumatic event? I'd say, oh yeah, it's the time I did this, because it was the thing that I had overcome. It was the safe one to talk about, right? Because I wasn't connected to anymore. And then one day I thought, okay, maybe I should like make a list and try to reconnect. And I thought I'll find maybe, I don't know, 6 or 7 events. I found 60.
Oh.
And but 60 in the sense of things that must have been traumatic at the time. And even, things like, finding a dead cat, your own dead cat when you're 5 years old, it must be traumatic, right? Even if the memory is faint. And other things that just because they ended well, it doesn't mean that there wasn't trauma involved. Like, getting lost on a mountain in the winter. I thought I was going to spend the night out there alone. Okay. Now, half an hour later, I found the group again and everything was fine. I was, adrenaline rush for several hours, but everything was okay. So I thought, well, it's not, sure, it was very eventful, but I didn't spend the night outside. So it's not trauma, but that's not true, because during that time, my body, my mind was going through the trauma of actually spending the night out there, right? I was anticipating maybe dying on that mountain.
Right.
Even if it didn't last hours and hours, or even if I didn't, come close to death. And then, so there are different levels of those kind of traumas that for an instant or a certain amount of time, you're getting into that space of being traumatized. But just because, phew, that turned out okay, it doesn't mean that, there isn't some kind of impact. And so visiting those things again, I think, okay, maybe I didn't take the gems out of there yet. Maybe they're just all these pebbles that are sort of sitting under the rock, under the carpet, and they're making it a bit lumpy and, uncomfortable to walk on. But what if I revisited those and tried to see how they were useful? Try to see where the gems are. Try to see how that, has made me who I am, but in a positive way.
Yeah.
And so that's a really, really interesting exercise to do. And when I take, young people on this journey, I go through it myself as well. I'm still learning. I'm still discovering. I'm still cracking rocks open.
Yeah.
Right? We do this together. I'm a travel companion. I'm not a,
Oh, I love that.
yeah, I just go along and, we chat and we meet up at the fire. Yeah, I look at it like a backpacking adventure. I tell
Yeah.
people, I'm going to take you backpacking. I have no idea where we're going. We're just going to do one step at a time. And, you go and do your little tour, and then we'll sit around the fire and we'll talk about everything we found.
So, and you draw this experience, or yeah?
So there's a drawing aspect to it. Yeah, it's a doodling, drawing, it's whatever the person's comfortable with, but there is drawing involved, because
That's awesome.
drawing is like a really quick and fun way to get into a meditative state, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like if you ask me to sit and meditate, I'll do it for 5 minutes, but I know that I'm just sort of like, winging it. But I'm just sort of pretending. But if you put a piece of paper in front of me, I can be gone for 3 hours.
Gotcha. It's interesting because you're talking about, cracking open the rocks and finding those gems and things like that. often when I'm working with my songwriting clients, I will take that lost child on the mountains in the Swiss, Southern Alps or wherever you are, the Swiss Alps, and I'll write a song to that person, like the Survival's Guide rock song, since we're talking about rocks, right? So I love that, like, the creative approach of just like taking that trauma and figuring out how it's contributed to the person you are now, even if it didn't feel traumatic 6 months, 6 years, 60 years later. Now you're able to look back and say, oh, actually that was some ish. Like
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
a thing. That's amazing. What a story. What a story.
And everything is useful,
Of
right?
course.
Everything is useful. And sometimes we when I was writing my book, this coloring book that's coming out, there's stories in there as well. And I was trying to find stories to go with the images.
Mm-hmm.
And some of those stories, I haven't thought about them in 30 years or even 40 years. And I was thinking, and as I was sort of writing them down, I thought, that's interesting. What was I left with? What was my last memory about that incident? Like, well, how does it still? What's the memory in my body and about it? And I actually started reflecting upon: do I want to keep that memory of this thing, or do I want to explore it and change sort of the impact, the outcome of it? And I had to go through this exercise actually with each story and wondering, what would I like to change about that? Not about the story, but just about the impact, that what it left me with.
Mm.
And it was a really interesting exercise to change that perspective and say, well, maybe it wasn't what I thought it was. Maybe it wasn't about, being angry because we moved every 2 years and I had to reinvent myself and I had to adapt and I had to, maybe there was an opportunity in there somewhere. And not just resentment, for having been uprooted every 2 years. What was the great thing about that? Well, it allowed me to start over. Sometimes I wanted to leave places because I wasn't get along with people. And all I knew I had to do was wait for the next move, which was going to come within several months. Or
Yeah.
So trying to see it from a different angle. And that was actually really, really, powerful. And this is why I say I'm still learning. I'm still discovering myself. I think we're
You're not growing, you're dying, that's for sure.
absolutely. I say that a lot, actually.
Yeah. I love that you lead by example so often. I think often, especially when working with all ages, I think it's easy for clients, young and old, to sort of come to somebody like yourself and think, okay, you're going to fix me, right? Whereas I think, especially for teenagers, we kind of look at our parents or our teachers, our coaches, mentors, and think they have all the answers, they've got it all figured out. Yet you allow yourself to be vulnerable enough and to show your inner child, to help them recognize the power of their inner child, which I think is so key, because you can't push somebody towards growth. You can't push somebody towards healing. You need to guide, support, love them, and walk alongside them, hike with them. I'm totally going to steal that. That's a great way to look at it. I love hiking. It's the New Zealand in me, but it's such a powerful way to do that for those, like for parents specifically. I'm curious if you have any ways that they can ensure that they maintain that relationship with their inner child, so that they too can show up in a trustworthy space with their teenagers.
Well, the thing is, I think that the best way, before I answer your question about how to connect with their inner child and to make sure it's there, I think when you're a parent, for me, what was really eye-opening was to realize that I'm also still in my own healing process. And
That's a really good
I
point.
think one great way to help your child is actually to acknowledge that you still have healing to do yourself. And that it's not too late, right? And to connect to the inner child, one easy way I like to talk about this topic is to look at the energy of words. Everything has energy, words of energy. And we use the vocabulary we use is partly, baggage as well. It's something we picked up from other people. It's from an environment, from our parents. And a playful way to reconnect with the energy certain words have for you is to actually start doodling around the word, right? You draw a word, you doodle around it, and you just sort of connect to the energy of that word and play with the words that you use and realize what energy they have and how you use them. Whether it's to talk about yourself or to talk about the children or to talk about, situations. And to start playing with your language just by becoming aware of that energy of the words you use is really, really powerful. And to just start sort of stepping into the play attitude and mindset with everything you do. Like when I have something really painful to do, because I'm quite an introvert. So sometimes, when I have to go on social media or do things like that, I'm like, oh, I don't know how to do that. I don't like to market things. And then, I'm thinking, oh, I should try this, I should try that. But like the word try for me is like really heavy. It's like, oh, try means it's going to be tough. I'm probably not going to succeed. Trying to tell myself it's okay if I don't succeed. So I don't even have to do it because it's not going to work anyway. But if I tell myself I'm going to play with it, I'm just going to play with it, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, the expectations, the heaviness, the difficulty all goes away. And then I actually want to give it a go because I'm just playing with this. I'm just going to, and then I'll play with something else. And so to step into playful words, to think about things as play for yourself to start with, right?
Yeah.
Is a great way to reconnect with play. And then the inner child, it's also about just remembering, what did you love to do when you were a kid? Like, what are these things that you did and you don't do anymore because now you're supposed to be serious and you're an adult and so forth. But what were those things? And don't, rather than say, yeah, but now it's too late. Or, no. Play with those things. Reconnect with, take that little kid by the hand and say, okay, what do you want to do today? Like, what would be,
I love this so much.
Have that presence. But for me, it's the playful mindset, the words, and just saying, how can I turn this painful thing into something that's actually a lot of fun?
I love that. One of the things I'm grinning like from ear to ear right now because as soon as you said I don't like the word try, it has too much baggage behind it. Absolutely. But the first thing that came to mind as soon as you started saying that was Yoda saying, do or do not, there is no try. I feel like we need to like reinvent that saying, like play or play harder. There is no try. Come on, Yoda.
Well, the thing is, the universe has an energy of playfulness in it, right? It's all about play. When you even look at laws of attraction and all that, we're all trying to master the laws of attraction, if you're into that kind of thing. But the thing is, it doesn't work if you've got these expectations and if you actually just put it out there and then you forget about it and you don't expect it, that's sort of when things start to happen and, present themselves. It is a playful energy.
Yeah.
Which is not surprising because nature, we learn through play. It's like if we reconnect with nature's way for a lot of the things, if we realign with the way nature works and we look at nature as our sort of blueprint and say, okay, what would that animal do? What would that tree do to overcome this obstacle? How does it work? How can I get close to that? Then we're actually getting closer to playfulness, to the play mode. And
I love that.
Then we're more in our natural element, and that's when the kid comes out, right? Because
I love that. I love that so much. Thank you for the challenge, Nicole. This week I'm going to go forth and I'm going to play my ass off. It's going to be great. And of course, you're going to. You cover all of these things. You've got games, you've got coloring books, you've got like all kinds of things on your website, which of course is maps-of-life.com. You also have the information for your new book on your website, which is called Stumbling Upon Myself, which is also filled with coloring books and self-reflection and discovery and poems and all kinds of fun bits and pieces. Can you tell us a little bit about that before we have to jump off?
About the
The
book?
book, yeah.
Oh, the book. Well, it's full of. Oh, okay, I happen to have full of these sort of coloring pages that are. This
Okay.
is about the journey. This is about the inner child. Seeing that we were talking about that. So there are these coloring images. There are stories in there. Like I said, of my childhood. There are quotes that I find really amazing that you can doodle around and just connect with. So you can't really put it in a category. Yes, it's a coloring book. Yes, it's almost like a little, biography. It's musings. It's playfulness. But it's especially a space to feel safe and just explore yourself and color, inside and outside the lines. Doodle,
Amen.
add your own stuff. Just
Amen.
go crazy. For me, the idea that someone can take this book with a bunch of coloring pencils, sit under a tree, and spend some time with themselves. And I kind of have this image where when I created this book, I had no desire to color it. Like for me, it was I don't need to color it. That I've created, my part of the journey is done. And so imagining that other people will come in here and bring their colors, and they'll all be different, and bring their own stories and bring their own doodles and so forth. Every book is going to be different, right? It's like a co-creation.
Yeah.
It's like a journey between two people, but it's beyond space and time.
Of course.
So we don't have to be there at the same time. We don't have to be, but we're still doing something together. The outcome is a combination of their and my experience. And I just really get a kick out of that idea that, I'm present with them and they're somehow connecting with me as well through this book.
That.
So it's an experiment. It's play.
It's play. It's play.
It's
Everything
for self-discovery. That's what it's all about.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for your time, Nicole. I really appreciate the fact that you've stayed up past midnight to talk to us all, in Switzerland, because time zones are real. But no, thank you for your time, for your insight, for your playfulness, your creativity. I'm so honored with your approach. It's not the most traditional approach to empowerment work, and I love that because neither is music, neither is songwriting, but it works. It's effective, and you're helping people, one child, one mind, one adult at a time, to just reconnect themselves in a way that is meaningful and impactful. So thank you for the work that you're doing. For everybody that's watching at home, obviously you can keep in touch with Nicole. I'll leave you to give your social media handles, Nicole.
Yeah, well, there's my Maps of Life, which is my website. You can also find me just with my name, NicoleWittauer.com. It'll lead to the same place. Any other social media, whether it's Facebook, again, it's Nicole Wittauer. Instagram is Nicole Wittauer. LinkedIn is Nicole Wittauer. So I'm pretty easy to find because it's a very common name. It's not a common name. So, I don't compete with others with the same name. I don't have to add numbers or anything.
Well, that's good. That's good. Well, thank you so much again. I really appreciate all that you're doing. For everybody else out there, remember to be playful this week. Do something that your inner child will thank you for this week, whether that's roaring outside the lines, whether that's writing a song, whether that's playing in the mud and remembering how to build a fort. Do something that makes your heart happy, because, the adult is the adult is how a child gets the creativity taught out of them. So, give yourself some time to just get a little bit fun, a little bit funky, and explore yourself, because you have the answers in you. Don't forget about them. Until next time, friends, be good, be safe, be kind, stay out of trouble, and remember that in a world that tries to tell you who to be, how to act, and how to show up, you really do have the answers in you. This is your life, your song, you have the pen. Don't let the world write it for you. See you guys next time.
Bye.
Breaking in my headspace, I'm trying to get my feelings straight. I've overthought my mistakes, I turn water to wine, so hard to stay sober. I'm damaged and I'm love stoned, so hard to remain in control. Rewriting what I thought I know, and I'm drinking it in, but the lesson ain't over. And I can almost pinpoint where we went wrong. I'm not about the sad songs, the foundation said I'm good to go. No matter what comes my way, I'll be smiling every step I take. I'm a legend, make no mistake, that I'm living proof that love wins. No matter what the future holds, I'm here and I'm not letting go. I'm a legend, baby, you should know that I'm living proof that love wins. Living proof that love wins. It's strange who I used to be, but I'm not going down quietly. I know I create my destiny. When it's bright as light, the evergreen knows it. I left behind the what if, I broke up with the negative. I'm flirting with abundance, and I'm drinking it in. My purpose is magic. You can almost pinpoint where my love began. I'm so glad that I know who I am, 'cause I'm the woman, I'm not the man. Whoa. No matter what comes my way, I'll be laughing every step I take. I'm a legend, make no mistake, I'm living proof that love wins. No matter what the future holds, I'll be here and I'm not letting go. I'm a legend, baby, you should know, I'm living proof that love wins. I'm living proof that love wins. Hey! Ho! Hey! Ho! I'm living proof that love wins. I'm living proof that love wins. No matter what comes my way, I'll be dancing every step I take. I'm a legend, make no mistake, I'm living proof that love wins. No matter what the future holds, I'll be here and I'm not letting go. I'm a legend, baby, you should know that I'm living proof that love wins. I'm living proof that love wins. I'm living proof that love wins.